Conspiracy theories hidden by the elites. Isn't it strange that we're all constantly using our smartphones, literally every day without failure, yet we never ever use them or even see them whilst we're dreaming? Ask your friends and family, do they ever dream? If so, have they actually seen their phone while dreaming? This isn't only phones. Other smart technology, like laptops and computers, you just barely see them, let alone interact with them. There's a theory that speculates that this proves that we are actually living in a simulation because some sort of energy is not wanting you to see something. In this case, it's your phone being hidden. Majority of people are vibrating at a negative or just regular frequency. At this level, people don't really recognize things that may be harming them. So imagine you become your higher self or reach a new realm where you're just happy and spiritually evolved. Once you see that phone, where it's just you scrolling, wasting your time, and lowering your frequency, you might decide, I don't want that anymore. Imagine that happens in the masses. That's a massive profit loss, and they don't want that. This is probably one of the craziest conspiracies out there. It states that governments and those in power actively push the most extreme conspiracy theories and theorists so that they would be known and therefore discredited. That way, there would be a stream of thought to dismiss any conspiracy theory as absurd, so that when someone actually discovers a real conspiracy but lacks conclusive evidence, they will say it is a conspiracy. So we will unconsciously discredit them or be even more skeptical of what would be a real conspiracy. If you look at one end of the spectrum, the theories will seem absolutely outrageous, but once you look at the other, it just reads as common sense, like simple science. This is why when people think conspiracy theory, they jump to like crazy ones. For example, reptilian aliens helping Tupac Shakur hide in the mountains, or just some celebrity living out his days in Cuba, rather than some theory about wealthy, powerful people, which is what most conspiracies boil down to. Monster Energy, a company known for its energy drinks. There is a theory about their logo. There's evident symbolism of a claw, right? The line in the M doesn't fully attach. Subtle detail, but clear when you look at it. When you divide the logo up, you get 3 symbols, similar to the number 1, but in reality is a symbol deriving from Hebrew alphabet, the number 6. Well, remember, there are 3 of these symbols, which make it 666. We often label that devil's number, right? The theory goes on to say that the O in monster has a cross on it. Monster isn't associated with religions, in this case, Christianity or like Catholicism. So what's the point in adding the cross? The theory then goes further to say that when you drink it, the can is rotated, so the cross then becomes upside down. We know that the upside down cross is a symbol for witchcraft. Then, finally, their slogan is Unleash the Beast. The slogan alongside the logo and the name must be on purpose. The question is, why did Monster decide to brand themselves like this? There is a crazy theory about lobsters. In the 17th and 18th centuries, they were actually considered a low-status food for the poorer people. However, you walk into a high-end restaurant nowadays and you get served a full lobster. Today, they are literally considered a delicacy and a status symbol. Back in the day, they were often labeled as the poor man's chicken. There's a story behind this, though. So, originally, they were routinely served as food for prisoners and slaves, both of whom often refused to eat them. One of the simple reasons they were fed to such a demographic during the colonial era is because they were so copious. They even used them as fertilizers. But this doesn't add up, right? Because even if you grant that lobster used to be more abundant and less expensive, it's still complicated and labor-intensive to prepare. If you've prepared a lobster before, you know it takes long to get the meat off to produce a sufficient amount. Well, the first reason it became a food highly sought is because during the Civil War, canning food became a viable way to distribute rations. Lobster was in high demand because it was cheap and high in protein, often labeled chewable fuel. Then reason number 2 is that there was a rise in the use of railroads and consequently tourism. People who had long eaten canned lobster were unaware of the food's low-class status in its place of origin. So upon traveling to New England, they would try fresh lobster for the first time and lose their minds over how delicious it was. As a result, demand for fresh lobster in other cities around the country rose exponentially, and because lobster must be shipped live, it ended up costing more to serve it, thanks to people like millionaire Diamond Jim Brady, who would reportedly eat 6 or 7 lobsters at a sitting. Thus, in a span of maybe 50 years, a trash food became a delicacy. In contrast, recent decades have spouted signs that the fate of the lobster may be moving back in the other direction, thanks to a newer consideration: animal rights. There's an essay asking, is it all right to boil a sentient creature alive just for our gustatory pleasure? Many animal rights activists have decided that the answer is no, and have made moves to classify the live boiling of lobsters as inhumane. Some places have already outlawed the practice. There is a theory about modern-day breakfast which states that breakfast isn't really the most vital meal of the day. It's just all propaganda. The origins of breakfast were not actually for health. It was really for selling more and more meat. So there's a guy called Edward Bernays, and they call him the grandfather of propaganda. Back in the day, they didn't really eat breakfast like how we eat breakfast today, with all the meats, eggs, and all that good stuff. Majority of the time, they didn't even eat breakfast. They just intermittent fasted, which is actually proven to be healthier. Now, remember milkmen too? They were pushing milk so heavily because they had a massive supply and not enough demand. And where does milk come from? Cows. So there's excess meat, but there's so much meat to the point that they couldn't sell it. So they just made breakfast a staple, saying that a doctor claims it is the most important meal of the day, which was all allegedly false. It was a way just to sell more meat. Did you know that eels are the only animals in the world that we have no idea where they came from? Scientists have done rigorous observations of them with little to no success. It's dangerous for scientists to study them, so it's a bit hard. So we don't really know where they originate from. The females and males have no reproductive organs, which poses the question, how do they reproduce? What's weird about eels is that, during a specific time in the year, regardless of where they are, will literally all travel to the Bermuda Triangle, and that's where they link up. No matter where they are from Europe, the freshwater rivers of the United States, when it's time to mate, they just all go to the Bermuda Triangle. Also, they did a test where they put the eels inside a bucket. Then, when it was time to mate, they all swam in the direction of the Bermuda Triangle. There's another theory about sea animals that link to this one. People have speculated that octopuses are aliens. People think eels also might not be from here. Then the theory goes on to claim that there was a meteor that crashed in the Bermuda Triangle and allegedly crashed 65 million years ago, coincidentally, when the dinosaurs were gone. There's a theory about makeup. It allegedly ruins the skin, making women use more and more until it becomes an endless cycle. Haven't you noticed that women that wear makeup pretty much tend to wear it all their lives? The idea is that the cosmetics are designed to worsen your skin over time, keeping you dependent on them. Think about it. You start with a few skin problems, and before you know it, you're piling on all sorts of, concealers just to cover them up. Over time, your skin gets clogged and irritated, leading to more issues. It's a very vicious cycle. So, chapstick companies might be putting ingredients in their products that make your lips drier, so you have to keep using them. Ingredients like petroleum jelly create a barrier that traps moisture. But imagine trapping moisture where there is no moisture. It's also the alcoholic ingredients that are a problem. Alcohols like phenol and menthol provide initial relief, but ultimately dry out your lips by stripping natural oils. This creates a cycle where your lips feel constantly dry, leading you to use more chapstick. You know those Walmart-type brands like Great Value, and then the regular brands, right? So they have Cool Whip, then just the normal whipped cream. I bet you didn't know. It's all made by the same company. It's just that Great Value goes to the same manufacturers, and they just get it made cheaper without the branding. So, you know the canned vegetables, right? The big name brand is called Green Giant, and the Great Value ones are also made by Green Giant. It's the same with cereal. There's this store called Aldi. Now, this store is known for having the best products that match up to the big name brands. That's how they promote their store. So if you go into Aldi, they have this brand called Millville, and all their cereals are replicas of cereals like Cinnamon Toast Crunch, Cookie Crisps, and Rice Krispies. They look so similar, but are all made by Millville. The real name brand is made by General Mills. They dug deep and found out that Millville is the same thing as General Mills. It's the exact same. They even taste the exact same. I bet you didn't know this story about Rolls-Royce. There was a discriminatory incident a while ago. Apparently, there was this Indian prince, right? He was over in London. He went to a Rolls-Royce showroom, which, for context, is a luxury car brand, pretty much. So the Indian king goes in and asks to test drive a Rolls-Royce. This was, like, early 20th century, by the way, and they didn't want to let him test drive it. This was because back in the day, there was a lot of racism, and they thought he looked like a bum in their eyes. Also, he wasn't wearing his nice clothes, like the king's attire, so he was literally just in regular clothes. They said, "No, we can't give you a test drive." You won't guess what he did the next day. He went ahead and wore his king's crown and everything, all his exquisite clothes. He went inside, and he told the owner, "Buy me 7 Rolls Royces." And this is what he says: "I'm going to send all of them back home to make them street cleaners, like the garbage trucks of India." We decided to turn the Rolls Royces into the street cleaners of India, and they were rude to him. And apparently, after all that, they gifted him 2 more cars.